What's up, guys? Welcome into the shed. Some of you know that for the last 2 years, I've been coming in here to demonstrate spec grade lighting products for the New York City specification community. As the world's opened back up, and that's not as necessary, I'm using this time and this space to make content around the design concepts and trends that I think are going to affect the lighting industry going forward. One of those trends that I wasn't really aware of, but started to hear in conversation more and more, was this idea of the flight to quality. And so what does the flight to quality mean, and how's it going to affect our future lighting choices? That's what we're going to talk about in this video, so stick with me. It's currently a hot term because of a recent report published by CBRE in July of 2022. The study of their effective rents through Q2 of this year showed a 6.7% increase in effective rent for top-tier real estate across the United States, while showing a 1.1% decrease in lower-tier properties. The study went on to show base rent was up in Class A real estate compared to lower tiers. I think it's important to pause here and just say that the CBRE study came out in Q2 of this year, and obviously with inflation and the government's actions to curb inflation, we are seeing potential slowdowns in the market. Money's more expensive. So I'm not going to pretend to know if we're in a recession, if a recession is going to happen, whatever. But I think these trends are still important because even if we're slowing down, I think the flight to quality is still a real thing. And we have some other metrics that are showing us that this is the case. Effective base rents were the top line numbers that media outlets and bloggers latched onto. But I thought there was something else that was kind of telling in terms of real world applications. So if you look at this chart here, it's a little tough to see with the gray background, but tenant improvement allowances jumped 23% in the first half of 2022 in lower tier buildings, while they fell in top tier real estate. And so if you don't know what that means, tenant improvement allowance is the negotiated sum of money that landlords give to new tenants to improve the space upon signing the lease. If tenants or landlords are giving 23% increase in TI, in tenant improvement allowance, that means that they're putting a lot of money on the table and making those spaces less profitable just to get people in the door, right? Because of the reduced demand for lower quality space. That means to me that we're moving toward high quality spaces, things that draw tenants to the buildings in this post-pandemic remote work era. Beyond the raw numbers, there was a really interesting study from the folks at Brookfield. They published a white paper, and I'll zoom this in so you can read it here, but this paper concluded that many smaller companies might decide that they need less office space going forward due to remote work. And so if they're going to have offices in the city to supplement that remote work, they're probably going to move to higher quality assets. And what they pointed to was 84% of total leasing activity in Midtown Manhattan occurred in Class A or trophy assets. So that signals to me, and it should signal to everybody, that this move toward quality is real, and it's happening here in New York City and across the country. So the question becomes, what does this mean as a design trend generally and for lighting specifically? Well, a recent Forbes article sort of jumped in on these trends, especially here in New York. The lease that turned the most heads was Google's really deep investment in New York City. By leasing St. John's Terminal, Google agreed not just to build office space, but a public food hall, community space, art galleries, and the city's largest public rooftop space. Google didn't just invest in office space, they invested in the culture and in their own company and the culture of New York City. Of course, Amazon made a similar move by purchasing the historic Lord & Taylor building on Fifth Avenue. And there were some less splashy leases, things that the companies like Fanatics, PayPal, and Venmo have all taken space in New York City and marquee buildings. A financial services firm called Block recently leased the top 4 floors of 375 West Broadway. So to me, what this signals is that the best and brightest, the most sort of exciting companies are not just investing in Class A real estate and moving into New York City, they're reinventing what an office space is going to be and how it's going to work. So the thing that I think about is, what does this mean for the lighting industry specifically? Windows and daylight for all. Okay. This is a shot of SOM's award-winning offices at 7 World Trade Center, and you can see daylight is key. Let's just get in on that there. You know, floor-to-ceiling windows, tons of natural light. This is one of the things that Class A real estate and marquee spaces are known for, is embracing daylight as a design element. That means we're going to be talking about, for sure, advanced daylight controls and daylight harvesting, but it also might mean that we're going to move toward tunable white sources. Tunable white is something that we've talked about in the industry for a long time, but I think inaccurately. We've been talking about it around circadian health. The truth is that tunable white is not necessary for circadian health or wellness. What tunable white is really good at is matching tones of light. So as the daylight shifts in these Class A spaces, people get in at 8 o'clock in the morning on a winter morning, and that's that crisp, warm morning light moving through cooler midday and then an early sunset. You want your light, or potentially we want our light, to track that change. And that's what I think tunable white could really be doing in some of these spaces, whether we're talking about, something like Color Select from USAI or the various tunable white sources that are out there on the market in the linear side. I think it's a totally solid way of engaging that kind of design. By the way, if you'd like me to do a video for the reasons to use tunable white, leave a comment below. If you don't know what color temperature is, if you don't know how this stuff works, leave a comment, let me know, and I'll do a video on it. Acoustics. Okay. So, super loud open office spaces with exposed ceilings are a thing of the past. If we're going to Class A real estate, people do not want to work in a bullpen with just strips of light over them in a really loud environment, having to strap on, noise-canceling headphones. Acoustics are back. There's something that we're talking about. The Will Building Standard is doing this. And acoustical cladding is bringing more materiality to these spaces. And that can be something that happens, whether we're talking about the return to acoustic ceilings with integrated lighting, like what we're seeing here from Aaron Lighting. So that just mounts right to that acoustic ceiling and creates this really interesting pattern. Or we can talk about pendant-style fixtures that include acoustical cladding right on the body of the fixture to increase that noise reduction coefficient. It also brings more materiality, color, volume, and it makes lighting statements at a relatively low cost. All right, we have to embrace shapes, curves, and touches of home. Okay, so building on that idea, so you're talking about Class A real estate, you're talking about drawing people back to the office after 2 years of working remotely in the comforts of their own home. How do we do that from a design perspective? Well, whether we're talking about curved form factors, things that sort of break up that line, that slots and dots style that we've seen for years. Prior to the pandemic, so many offices were open offices, like you're seeing on the left-hand side there, and just, streaks of light right down the bay, just enough to get light on the tables, some downlights in the corridors, and you called it done. But I think we have now opened up the possibility of more design choices. And the other thing, might be a little tough to see there, but on the lower right-hand side, bringing in the faux wood and mixed metal finishes that have become so popular on the residential side into the commercial world is a way of bringing some of those, those touches of home, right? The things that people are coming into the city for are not just the location. I think they want a real rich workspace to come into. And just doing metal finishes is a way to do that. It's also something that's not going to get VE'd because everyone understands it, right? Everyone along the job, from the architect to the interior designer to the owner to the owner's rep, understands what something looks like. It's a different shape. It's not talking about the sort of more esoteric lighting specs that come out there. Next up, high CRI. Okay, so CRI over 90 is the standard for many lighting companies. And for high quality office space, it's a no-brainer to work with 90 plus CRI. If you don't know what CRI is, by the way, leave a comment below because I'll do a video just on CRI and explaining what color rendering index is and why it's important. But for the purposes of this conversation, CRI is basically how well a light source reflects colors back to your eye, right? It's about the quality of light. And if you're talking about Class A real estate, you're talking about spaces like this, where this is a residence, but the idea here is that you've got feature art on a wall that needs to pop, right? It needs to show people something. And so it depends on the client and it depends on the layout, but you don't have to have 98 CRI throughout your space, but in the places where it makes sense, investing in a higher quality CRI to pop that color and really make the space inviting and visually interesting is just a way of reinvesting in that Class A real estate. Because to me, if a company in this environment is saying we're going back to the office and we're going back in a big way, they want to make it a space like this. They want to make it a high-end, vibrant space. Higher levels of design and construction coordination. Okay, so I don't have a fancy graphic for this, so I'm going to turn this off. Look, high-end commercial real estate and high-end lighting can do a lot of things. We can talk about enhancing daylighting. We can talk about acoustical design. We can talk about art lighting. We can reduce the noise coefficient in a space through acoustical cladding. But all of those things and all those design elements mean that we need a higher level of coordination. The lighting designer needs to be, obviously everyone's talking to the architect, but architects, interior designers, lighting designers, acoustical engineers, the AV consultants, the systems programmers, the folks that are going to make this all come together so that you walk in a room and push a button and the shades move and the lights fade and the color temperature is right. There's a lot going on there and a lot to coordinate. And I think it means that the design cycle may have to get a little bit slower, a little bit more thoughtful. I might be. I know any designers right now that are watching this are like, yeah, sure, man, that'll happen someday. But I think that's what's going to be required to go forward. If this video was helpful to you, please take a second, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. I'm going to be doing more of these, 1 or 2 a month, talking about things like sustainability, trends in healthcare design, circadian health, how to incorporate things like mixed metals into your finishes for fixtures. All the trends that I think are gripping the industry right now as we sort of move into this next era of the spaces that we inhabit. Lighting can change everything. And so if you want to learn more about that, please like, subscribe, comment, share, all the things. And I'll see you on the next one.